Hello and welcome to another video lesson with Mr. Roman. Today we're going to be talking about solving equations part 2. And so last time we talked about solving an equation is really just working backward of the order of operations. And here we have a problem where we have grouping symbols, and so we look at this and we say, well, the order of operations would say to start with multiplication here between the -4 and the x, and then we would do the 22, so the subtraction there, and then we would multiply all that by the 3. But if we're going to be solving this equation, we could work backward of that, starting with this, then working to that, and then that. And so let's look at that. Let's see what that would look like here if we're solving this equation for x. Okay, so if I work backward, starting with the 3, if I'm multiplying the 3 times everything inside the parentheses, well, to undo that, I need to divide by 3 on both sides of the equations. So then here the 3's will cross divide to 1, and on the left side will be equal to 7. So I'll be left with 7 equals 22 minus 4x. And then the next part would be to subtract 22 from both sides. Over on the right side, 22 minus 22 would be equal to 0. And then here we have -15 equals -4x. And then if we were to take the next step, we would divide, since we're multiplying by -4 to x, we would divide by -4 on both sides. And then we could say that x equals a positive 3.75, or 3 3/4 as a mixed number. And it's positive because a negative divided by a negative is a positive. Now let's look at that same problem in maybe a different way to do it, because some of you would want to use the distributive property first, and that's okay. So if we use the distributive property here, we're going to take 3 times 22, which is 66, minus 3 times -4x, which is going to be -12x, and that's going to equal 21. And then here we would just simply work backward of the order of operations again. So we would start by subtracting the 66 from both sides. Here the 66 minus 66 would equal 0. On the the left side would equal -45 equals -12x. And then we would divide by -12, not 12x. We would divide by -12 on both sides, -12. And so that x equals, again, 3 3/4, or 3.75. Now, we have an equation here where we have variables on both sides of the equation. So it's not as simple as just working backward of the order of operations. What we want to do here is we would want to get all of the m's, all the terms with m in them on one side of the equation, and all the single numbers on the other side of the equation. So if I've got 8 m's over here, I can think of this as like m plus m plus m plus m plus m plus m plus m. So 8m is really like saying m plus m plus m plus m plus m plus m 8 times. I'm sorry, I need one more m in there. Okay, and if I wanted to get rid of those m's on the right side of the equation, really I could just subtract 8m from both sides, or 8m's from both sides of the equation. So here I can subtract 8m and subtract 8m. Now 8m minus 8m is going to be 0 on this right side, but then 15m minus 8m is going to give me 7m. Still have the 36 on the left side, and the 22 still stays on the right side. Now I want to get these 7m's by themselves, so I'm going to subtract 36 from both sides here. And then I'll be left with 7m equals -14. And then from here we would simply use the reverse of this multiplying by 7, which would be divide by 7 on both sides. And we can see that m is going to be equal to -2. And if we wanted to check our work, we could simply put -2 in for everywhere we see m. So we could say 15 times -2 plus 36 is equal to 8 times -2 plus 22. We could check our work that way, and this would be -30 plus 36 equals -16 plus 22. Okay, over on the left side here you'd get 6 equals, and on this right side you would also get 6. So yeah, this does check out. -2 is a legitimate answer for that. So then here, when we're dealing with not only with variables on both sides of the equation, but also grouping symbols inside the equation, we would want to start by just simply simplifying each side of the equation separately. So here, if I want to start on the right side, there's an understood -1 here that I need to use the distributive property with, and that's going to be 6y minus 23 on the right side, and the 9y minus 24 still stays. Then I could simplify further and say 6y minus y is going to be equal to 5y, still have the minus 23 there. And then from here, I would want to get the y's together, so I'm going to subtract 5y from both sides. And that is going to leave me with 4y minus 24 equals -23. And then I'm going to add 24 to both sides of the equation, so that 4y equals 1. Now here, the last step is to divide by 4 on both sides, but a lot of students want to say that that's going to be equal to 4, but in fact, that's going to be equal to 1/4, which is actually 0.25 as a decimal. Okay, so 1 divided by 4 is 0.25. A lot of students are thinking of 4 divided by 1, which is 4. So the order of the division matters here. So 1 divided by 4 is 1/4, or 0.25, but 4 divided by 1 is just 4. So this would be our answer here. Let's look at another example. Here on the left side, we want to start with the distributive property here and here. So we're going to say 56 minus 14x minus 31 equals 25 plus x. Then we would simplify, say 56 minus 31 is going to be 25. So we're going to have 25 minus 14x equals 25 plus x. And then we would want to get the x's together on one side of the equation. So I'm going to just go ahead and bring the x's to the right side. So I'm going to add 14x to both sides. And then here we're going to get 0. So 25 equals 25. And then these two, we're going to add 1x to 14x, which is going to give you 15x. And then I would subtract 25 from both sides of the equation. And then 25 minus 25 is going to equal 0. And then I'm going to be left with 15x. Here, I still need to divide by 15. There's still a systematic approach we can use, but common sense tells us, hey, 15 times some number equals 0. Well, geez, that number has to equal 0. But to show it systematically, you would still divide by 15, and then x is equal to 0 in this case. And the last example we can look at is here we would want to multiply again. We would use the distributive property, so you get 32 minus 24p plus 1, and then p minus 29 minus 7p. And then we need to actually simplify both sides of the equations here. So we take p minus 7p, which would be -6p minus 29 equals, and then here we're going to simplify the 32 and the 1, so we're going to say 33 minus 24p. And then we want to get the p's together on one side of the equation, so I'm just going to add 24p to both sides here. Over here we're going to get 0, and then on the left side of the equation you're going to get 18p minus 29 equals 33. Then you would want to add 29 to both sides. And we're going to say that 18p is equal to 62. And then we would want to divide by 18 on both sides, so that p equals 3 4/9 as a mixed number. But if we wanted to put that as a decimal, we would say 3.4 repeating. So 3.4 repeating, or 3 4/9. One of those two answers would work. And that concludes our video for Solving Equations Part 2.